No.
So in this workshop, we're going to look at the topic of violence, and we do so because as journalists, we need to identify where it is occurring. But how do we know that something is violence? We will attempt to answer that question in the course of this workshop. Our work in these workshops will require that we examine our own lives, and in some workshops, we will be asking you to reflect on your own lives. And in some moments of the group work, you will also probably end up discussing personal and existential things with your colleagues. In this situation, it's important to set out a ground rule from the beginning, which is that everything that is said about one's personal experience in these workshops is not to be repeated outside of these workshops. We're trying to create a safe space here where people can open themselves and talk about things which are maybe, very personal, and so we need to ensure that everything that is said here remains in this space. Unfortunately, if we find out that people are revealing things that shouldn't be revealed, we will remove people from this course. So, I'm sure that won't ever happen, but it's a serious thing that we're trying to stress here. So, for the reading for this week's workshop, we talked about the reading was on the topic of violence, and I'm just going to go through a few slides which I've prepared. Share my screen. Just start that. Yeah, so what are the things that people have said about violence in the past? Well, according to the World Health Organization, violence is the intentional use of physical force or power, threatened or actual, against oneself, another person, or against a group or community that either results in or has a high likelihood of resulting in injury, death, psychological harm, maldevelopment, or deprivation. But this is what the World Health Organization wrote in a report in 2002. They limit it purely to the physical act of force. Johan Galtung, who is a very strong reference in the field of peace journalism, and if you Google peace journalism, you'll find millions of references to Galtung. In his paper from 1969, he says that violence is defined as the cause of the difference between the potential and the actual, between what could have been and what is. Violence is that which increases the distance between the potential and the actual, and that which impedes the decrease of this distance. So all of that sounds very, very complicated, but then he immediately follows it up with an example. Thus, if a person died from tuberculosis in the 18th century, it would be hard to conceive of this as violence, since it might have been quite unavoidable. But if someone dies from it today, despite all the medical resources in the world, and I would add personally all the economic possibilities in the world, then violence is present according to our definition. So that's Johan Galtung. Stilo broadened the definition further. He said, when people speak of violence, generally what they mean is physical violence, the most overt expression of corporal aggression. Other forms of violence, amongst others, economic, racial, religious, and sexual violence, can sometimes take place. While their character is hidden, nevertheless, it results in the submerging or enslavement of human intention and liberty. In cases where these forms of violence are exercised openly, they are also at times then applied through physical coercion. Every form of violence has discrimination as a correlate. So here, broadening the definition to include other forms of violence which are not physical. So economic violence, if I employ someone at a miserable wage that they can't then afford to look after their family, that is causing incredible pain and suffering to the person that I'm employing, but it's not physical. I'm not physically beating them, but somehow I'm using my position of power to manipulate them into experiencing pain and suffering. I'm not going to go through these. This is about acts of nonviolence, which you will have read in our introductory in one of the readings today. So let me stop my sharing. Okay. So, so there we have it. There's what different people have said on the topic of violence. For our first exercise today, what I want is I'm going to break you into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I'm going to break you into 3 groups. And in the first exercise, I want you to, first of all, introduce yourself. I want you to develop your own definition of violence. Yeah, you've seen what 3 people have said there. Try and find amongst yourselves what for you, what you all agree on are the common elements of violence. Yeah, and then try and work on defining that in, I don't know, 2 or 3 sentences. Try and come up with a synthesis, a summary of your discussion. Okay, so if you go ahead with your definition from group 1, Fatia.
Okay, thank you. We said violence is the intention to inflict physical, psychological, and economic harm to others, either individuals or groups, from a position of power.
Very good.
Very good.
And group 2, what did you come up with? So that's Ina, Gillian, Karina, and Mina. Who's going to speak from that group?
Well, it was more a brainstorming, and unfortunately, I spoke too much. So
don't worry. Just say a few of the things that seem to be common amongst your interchange.
Thank you. So one point was how to measure violence. Is there something like a scale we can work with in order to distinguish between unintentional and intentional violence? And then we swirled around the question, what creates a public space for accepting violence? And one example was homosexuality, which was forbidden by law in Germany. So it was normal to punish homosexuals until 1973. And only when the public space shifted, the approach towards homosexuals started to change into more tolerance. And we looked at it from the perspective, who is in power to create this public space, to frame violence against one or the other group. And at this point we stopped, but this is, I think, a crucial question. What are the forces behind the acceptance of violence in public?
Thank you.
Anything to add, Karina or Mina?
Okay.
Then I hand over to group 3.
Okay, so then group 3, which was Mo, Sameh, Syed, Tesnim, and Vixent. Someone from that group want to give us their thoughts?
I think I'll go if everyone is okay.
Yeah, go.
So Vincent provided this definition, and then we sort of added things to it. So violence can be intentional, like the act of someone to attain power or superiority over an individual or group of people, which could be in a form of physical, psychological, economic, racial, or religious attack that harms the well-being of certain people. But it can also be unintentional, like any harmful consequence due to negligence of something that could have been avoided, like, for example, chickenpox in 2023. So we also talked a bit about personal and structural violence, and Tasmin said that structural violence can be, gave the example of systematic racism, for example. So we stopped at that, and then the time is over.
Okay, good. Well, it seems like there were interesting discussions. I mean, one of the keys, I think, in this whole topic of violence is the register. Yeah, what does it feel like? Yeah, when I feel like I am being treated violently, I feel something in my body. I feel pain and suffering of some kind. And we're going to come onto this topic next. Now, I have sent via email, because I know that I sent out the book called the Nonviolent Journalism Training Workshops, and that book is going to be accompanying this set of workshops. And in there, I have put little tables, pages of the document where you can actually make notes for yourself. But I have just sent via email the document specifically connected to workshop 1, and that's gone out to all of you, and that might be useful for this next part. So what I want you to do now in the next part of this meeting for 10 minutes is okay. Zaina, I'm just going to put you on mute. Okay. So I want you to review your own history, and I've identified times when you have been the victim of different forms of violence and when you've been the perpetrator. What did it feel like in the different cases? What was happening in your mind? What was happening in your body? Now, I just want to make it clear at this point, although we are in these workshops, we are talking about things which are personal. Nonviolent journalism per se isn't a form of therapy. You know, when some people may have severely traumatic experience of violence in their lives, and we're not asking anyone here to relive trauma. When we're talking about this violence, we're going to take the common everyday situations of violence, discrimination, the stuff that happens, you know, every day that we really kind of overlook because they seem so trivial in the face of other forms of violence which are happening, but they affect us. So there is, I'm going to share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about. Oh, that didn't work.
Wow, difficult.
Yeah. Where is it? Here we are. Share. Okay. So I want you to look through, you know, just do a personal reflection, 10 minutes, historical experience of violence, describe the situation, and try and remember what was going on in your body. How are you feeling in your body, and how are you feeling in your mind? And it's important to do this because violence, we understand violence by the personal. When violence is happening to us personally, we understand it because of the registers, what's happening in our body and in our mind. And so being able to recognize those registers will enable us to detect when violence is happening to us personally. And then that gives us the opportunity. If we recognize that there's a situation of violence happening, then we can do something about it. So I want you to think about what was happening as when you were the victim of different forms of violence, and when you were the perpetrator, because I'm sure that none of us here are complete saints who have never managed to avoid hurting anyone in the past. So we're going to have a look at it from the two aspects, and then see if we can come out with any conclusions from that. Now that table there is in your email, and I can also send it through here, but I'm going to give you 10 minutes now to do that personal reflection. And I'm just checking my lesson plan. Where is it? How long have you got for this? Yeah, 10 minutes for this. No one's going to be asked to present back on this. This is a purely personal reflection. And then and then another 10 minutes looking at the situations of violence that you are, and look for current situations of violence that you may or may not be experiencing. So looking in the document I sent through, there are 3 tables. One is your experience of violence as a victim. One is your experience of violence as a perpetrator. And then I'm going to share this again. In the 3rd table, I want you to have a look at the different areas of your life. Take your family life, relationship with a partner if you have one, work at college with your friends, and have a look and see if you can identify places where you are you're currently experiencing violence, either as a victim or as a perpetrator. So it's 12 minutes to the hour now. I'm going to give you time until, I don't know, about 10 past the hour to do that piece of work. I'm not going to put you into, actually I am, I'm going to put you back into breakout groups so that if you want to discuss with the others, then you can do so. Let me stop my sharing, put you into the groups, and then you can bounce ideas off each other if you think that would be useful. So.
All right.
Yeah, so it's great to see so many of you. I'm really glad to see so many of you here, because I thought that maybe some of you had done the readings and thought, this is a load of rubbish, I'm never coming back. So it's quite nice to see that you are all in fact here. And the problem has been caused by the changes due to daylight savings in different parts of the world. I think now all of those changes of daylight savings have now happened, so we should be set on this time for the workshops going forward. Okay, so whatever time is in your country now, this is the time that we're going to be meeting next week and until the end of this course. So great. So any questions? I mean, I've for those who've just been in the breakout groups and doing your exercises, have you come to any comments, any thoughts, any things that occurred to you during that reflection? Anything that you would like to ask questions about now? I'm not going to ask anyone to talk about their personal situations of violence, but if anyone's got any comments or questions, then that will be great if we can hear them. Go on then, Chris, let's hear from you.
Okay, I just realized that it's actually quite hard to always say when you may have been a perpetrator, because sometimes you don't know. I mean, very self-reflective people, maybe humble and whatever, experienced enough to say that they may have been violently, intentionally, unintentionally hurting other people. Yeah. But it may look very different from the other angle to a certain extent. And it's maybe the very same thing if you ask someone whom you think may have hurt you. So it's always about perceiving it from different angles, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an important point. We may feel that we are being the victims of violence, and the person who is causing that violence may be blissfully unaware of what they're doing. Yeah, so it's going to come on to the next point and the final point of this workshop, which is how do we tackle situations of violence, especially these situations which are not necessarily the physical forms of violence. Yeah, in our everyday activity, if we're feeling someone is putting us down, treating us badly, hurting us, then what can we do about that? Anyone got any thoughts about that? What would you do in the situation where you feel that you are being treated violently by someone else? Someone's making you suffer.
Can I go?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so I think the important thing is to understand the reasons why that person is inflicting violence on us. because I believe in most cases, they're also suffering a kind of violence, and they're just doing a reaction. They're reacting to whatever they are dealing with themselves. So if we can understand the reasons behind their behavior, we can deal with those reasons and the problem could be solved.
Yeah, and how would you solve that, Fatia? What would be the first step you would do?
To actually speak to that person who did me harm, and yeah, communication is always key. Communication
is the biggest tool of nonviolent direct action. Yeah, establishing a dialogue with someone, talking to them, explaining your point of view. Chris, I see your hand up. You're on mute, Chris. I can't hear you.
Sorry. Okay. So I do think, absolutely, I completely agree that communication is a helpful tool in that context, but it does very much also depend on the person you're dealing with. There's a comment in the chat, which I also completely agree. Some perpetrators may not want to, potentially even intend to make you go nuts. So communication won't help. And then I also think that there are different dimensions of violence. If you, for instance, say it's a violent act which needs the police, you should definitely also go beyond talking only. If you know what it is, if you know what it is about, you should definitely go to the police immediately. And I would argue this is exactly where journalism also comes into place. You need to sometimes make it public. It's not only a thing between two people, but when it comes to human rights abuses, for instance, sex trafficking, whatever, it's much more than just this, the violence is not just between two people, but it's actually a huge, more than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was saying to some of the others who joined after the hour before we got into the workshop, you know, why are we doing this? Why are we looking at this topic of violence? We're looking at this topic because we want to, you know, we want to live more intentionally in our lives. Yeah, I was saying earlier that a lot of the time we go through life kind of daydreaming. Our images, our mind is wandering all over the place, and we're not really 100% present in the present moment. Yeah, so the fact that we have a body and our mind which is giving signals all the time, they're saying, hey, I don't like that, that's not very nice, I feel uncomfortable, is a kind of wake-up call, is a moment where you can wake up and you can observe and you can say, hang on, this is happening to me. When you are then in that position, there's kind of an awakening. You have the opportunity then to make a decision, to make a choice. Either you can do something about the situation of violence, and if it's something, you know, in the home, a domestic situation with friends, with colleagues, whatever, you can make a decision. I'm going to have a conversation with that person, or you can do nothing about it. Both of those are choices, and both of them will have consequences. So, you know, from our point of view, if we're talking about personal situations, it's much better to be able to deal with personal situations of violence. Why? Because then we free up energy, we free up mental energy from worrying about this particular issue. We can apply it to other things where we feel are more important for our lives. Yeah, so all of these things are kind of connected, and all of them, certainly for us as nonviolent journalists, it's very important for us to be aware of what are the different types of violence and their impacts on us, because then when we are aware of that, we can do something about it. And it could be, you know, we see a situation which is not just affecting me, it's happening a whole group of people, we can write about it, we can expose it, we can shine a light on it. Great. That will help to hopefully create a positive transformation of the system. And as has happened throughout history, the more that we shine the light on domestic violence, the more that we shine the light on homophobia, the more that we shine a light on religious persecution, we create a feeling of solidarity with other people. We empathize with the people. We see the human face of the other people. And by putting a human face on the other person, it really limits how much violence we're going to exercise on other people, because I don't know about you, but we all, but I have empathy. If I see someone suffering from violence, I want to do something about it, and I want to stop that suffering. Yeah. So that's why we're bringing it all back to the topic of nonviolent journalism. Now, the final exercise which I wanted to do today, but I think I'm going to leave it as a personal exercise for you all, is to again take further forward this idea of the personal reflection and looking at the different situations that you've experienced in your life and that may currently be going on in your life. Try and take one this week. Try and make a proposal to do something about it, and just prove to yourself that tackling a situation which you're perceiving, which you're experiencing as violence, and doing something non-violently, in this case with the use of direct communication, will have a positive effect. And that can create a kind of virtuous circle which you can carry on throughout your life. Seeing situations of violence, tackling them at the point of source, resolving them, and freeing up all of that energy, that mental energy, all that stress, and targeting it towards something that you actually really want to do with your life, which hopefully in this case will be writing fantastic stories for Presenter or for whichever media company that you are working with in the future. So we are getting towards the end of this workshop. Does anyone have any questions, any comments about this workshop or about anything to do with this course? I hope has anyone here not been able to connect with their mentor, for instance? Madeline, I haven't had an email from you to confirm the times, but I'm sure there are others. Mo, I'm still waiting for some information about the mentor meeting. Any other questions? Any other comments? Hisham. I can't hear you, Hisham. I don't know if you're talking. You're not on mute, so it may be a problem with your microphone. No, I'm not hearing you, Hisham. Try and sort out your technical issue. Does anyone else have any comments, any questions?
Yeah, I replied back for the Thursday meeting.
Did you? Oh, okay, great,
Yeah.
Mo. I don't think I found that email.
That's
but
all
great.
good.
Okay, Hisham, try again.
He's muted.
He's muted now.
Yeah.
Okay, great. The final exercise from this workshop was to take a topic of violence in your own life and try and do something about it before the next meeting. And, there's not a test. It's it's just proving to yourselves that you can do something in your own lives to help you suffer less. Hisham, I think you're off mute. Let's see if we can hear you. No, now you're muted again. And now, no, there's still no sound coming from you. If you can type your comment in the chat, we'll get back to you. Okay, so I want to thank you all for turning up to this workshop. I'm sorry that the confusion of the time has meant that some of you have arrived an hour late. It's a pity that it didn't work the other way and everyone had arrived an hour early, but anyway, it is what it is. Next week, the workshop will be at the hour, whatever the hour is now, it's going to be at that time, at the top of the hour. And you should all be having a meeting with your mentor between now and next Saturday. Next Saturday, we're going to go into the first real technical writing topic. We're going to look at the idea of nonviolent news reports. I'm going to send out a little bit more reading this week. Your mentor meetings this week will be about getting to know your mentor, having a conversation with them, trying to identify your areas of interest and any problems, any difficulties that have arisen as a result of the reading and the workshop this week. So thank you all so much. Chris?
Sorry, one last question.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, when are, let's say, articles to assignments, when are assignments coming up?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first assignment will come out at the end of the next workshop, and then there'll be more or less one assignment every week until the end of the course, and you can actually write and submit as many articles as you have the time to be able to do, Chris. And the topics of those you're talking about with your mentor, so that we can just help you get the right framing, and help you whatever it is the topic that you want to develop.
Excuse me, what about now?
Yes, Hisham, we can hear you.
Welcome.
Okay, okay, thank you. So I'll keep the camera off. So
Okay.
who knows? Okay, just for the first thing, I really had a little question here.
Yeah.
I really have no idea about the essence of the course here. Are we trying to be in a coaching like session, so trying to free up the stress and the energy as you mentioned, and to find specific things, or we are just trying to be more professional and try to deal with theory and find something theoretical here to face or to combat the violence, just theoretically?
We're doing both things, Hisham. So over the course of these workshops, there are 12 more. Every week we're going to take, or every 2 weeks we're going to take a technical topic. So next week is about writing news reports, and the week after will be more philosophical, ideological, giving you things to think about and to consider.
Yeah, because excuse me.
Yep.
Yeah, because when I listened to Fateh, she was speaking as she's a bit shy and trying to find solution to the guy who is exerting some violence.
Yep.
But Chris was a bit different. She was thinking about solutions like police and applying the law and applying the rules.
I mean, and there are certainly those situations. I mean, there are situations in daily life which require nothing more than just actually sitting down and having a conversation with someone, and there are other situations which require intervention of the authorities. Especially if these situations can lead to serious harm, physical harm. There's no question. We're not suggesting not to use the authorities when they are there for our protection, and we're certainly not saying that everything can be resolved with a conversation. We're saying that it's possible to be more awake, more alert to the situations of violence that are happening in life, and it is possible to actually tackle some of them when you become aware of them. Yeah, one of the topics in the first chapter of the book of Nonviolent Journalism is about the idea of intentionality. It's about the idea of being able to use this capacity that we are endowed with as human beings, this capacity to have an intention and to put it in the world. It's about harnessing that capacity and doing more of it. Yeah, because if we can live more intentionally, then we can do the things that we want to do. And if we are, on the other hand, if we're living very, very mechanically, we're just kind of being buffeted by the situations that are happening around us, we feel like we're out of control, that we don't know what to do in order to move forward. So nonviolent journalism is going to be about developing that capacity for self-observation, self-reflection, and how to apply this more awake consciousness to the activities that we want to do in the world. And in this case, this activity is journalism. Does that make sense, what I'm saying, Hisham?
Yeah, absolutely true. And just because I missed the first hour, so I just wanted to get things clear. Okay, one more remark, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So I got Antonio's email last night, and I didn't answer back because I'm not sure about the right time that I can decide. So it's better for me to wait for 1 or 2 days so I can go to school and check the new timing and then answer back if that's possible. That's
absolutely fine. I'm sure you'll be in contact with Hisham via email to arrange that. So
thank you so much. Sorry for interrupting you. I kept interrupting you.
No, don't worry. Don't worry, it's all
Because it
good.
was
Yeah,
late
I'll
and
be
so-
as flexible as possible now in the beginning until we get into a rhythm that will suit everyone.
Yeah,
So
okay,
nobody
thank you.
will miss out.
Just really sorry because there were some holidays here and tomorrow our students are back to school, so I must try to
Yeah.
Don't
decide on
worry.
the timing. Okay, thank
Don't
you.
worry, it's all good. So
Thank you so much.
everyone, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your night, afternoon, morning, and I will see, hopefully I will see the ones in my mentor group on Tuesday. Thursday, I think it is Thursday. And everyone else, I will see you back here next Saturday.
Saturday.
Take care.